What's the difference between MAC and Maybelline or any brand you are obsessed with? It's not the ingredients, it's the customer. Both brands are widely successful, but their branding, positioning, even where they're sold, are completely different. And here's the part that nobody tells you. Big brands don't build by accident. They don't guess, they don't rely on trial and error. They use strategy, they use data, and they use precision. And if you don't know your numbers, you truly don't know your customer. Welcome to Build an Obsession Brand, the podcast where we break down the science behind brand building so you can compete with the big brands and turn your beloved product into a household name. Let's dive in. Eleanor, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for saying yes. And before we get started, I want to ask you this question. How did you get to where you are today?
Through dreaming big, being really courageous, taking lots of risks, and being willing to put in the work every day. That has been my particular formula. So I run a business where I coach and work with women leaders and entrepreneurs. Prior to that, I had a consulting business. So I ran a consulting business where I did communications consulting for companies, leaders, political leaders, organizations. And it was through that process that a lot of women emerged, and they were asking me to help me position themselves and help me position their brands and help me sort of position them in a category of one. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started to see this opportunity to work with women leaders, in particular women entrepreneurs, in a more focused way. So mm-hmm. That's really how I ended up here.
How do you define positioning?
I define positioning as how you communicate your relevance in the marketplace to a specific category of customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And are there certain facets that need to be included in positioning? Because I know some people talk about messaging as positioning. Mm-hmm. I know some people talk about conviction as positioning. How do you define it and what needs to be included?
When I think about positioning, I think about, so it's sort of a series of dichotomies, this or that, right? So I think about, hey, are you big volume or are you boutique? Which matches you more? Mm-hmm. So that will be one. Are you all about long-term sustainable, mm-hmm. As an example, or are you about, so for instance, are you about durable fashion or are you more fast fashion? So I think that when we think about positioning, the most effective way to think about it is through a series of either ors. Like as a kid, I used to play this game, Hot or Colder. And so you'd be blindfolded or something, you're going to look for something and the kids are like, hotter if you're getting closer, colder if you're moving farther away. So to me, positioning is, because it's very relational and it's very relevant, the pieces that you're always asking yourself, again, and I usually start with volume. Mm-hmm. Like, are you mass or are you boutique? Mm-hmm. Are you high end or are you more accessible? Mm-hmm. That is how I think about positioning.
What's a brand you think that has the best positioning?
Ooh. I think a brand that I love is Porsche.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
And I really like the Porsche brand because I think they embody what I think to be true about so many incredible brands, which is there's a big emphasis on durable revenue. Mm-hmm. There's also a big emphasis on, like, they understand, they study their customers like they're doing a PhD in their customers. So they understand that for most Porsche drivers, it's a lifelong aspiration. Mm-hmm. And so it's about creating a lifelong connection with that brand. When somebody becomes a Porsche owner, it's something that they want, it's like they've made it. So it's extremely aspirational. I love that, in the branding. And so they think about long-term positioning. They also think about if you're a person who's going to buy a Porsche, you have the money, you don't want your Porsche to look like everybody else's. And so, for instance, in any one year, they make 40,000 Porsches a year. There's like two will be the same. So if you buy a Porsche, there's probably only one other person that year who got the same Porsche as you
Yes.
because of the type of customization. So it tells me that they really think a lot about their customers. And, as I was preparing for our conversation,
Mhm.
that was such a big thing that I thought about, like the
Mhm.
obsession that great brands have
Mhm.
with their customers. It's
Mhm.
like an enduring love affair.
Oh my goodness. Now you're speaking my language because my philosophy is if you do not know your customer, you do not have a brand. So,
Yeah.
how important is customer insights, customer psychology into when you think about premium positioning? For
Mm.
brands, for women founders, is it the first thing they need to do? Because I feel like many people chase premium positioning, but very few people sustain it.
Oh, yeah. My gosh. Customer insight is massive.
Yeah.
Like I started my career, so I started in advertising, and so I saw firsthand how important customer research was, in creating successful advertising and branding campaigns for big brands. And then I actually moved into journalism. And so in journalism, it was all about like the way that you understood and reported on the news
Hmm.
was by talking to people who experienced the news firsthand, or who had firsthand knowledge.
Hmm.
It was so powerful because that training showed me the degree to which people have very unique perspectives
Yes.
about very similar things, which is what a brand is. It's a unique perspective on a similar thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
So customer research is huge. And I actually think it's an area of opportunity that many entrepreneurs overlook,
Yeah.
that they're not nosy enough about their customers. They don't ask their customers enough questions. They're not obsessed enough with their customers. And the more this obsession, the deeper this obsession goes,
Hmm.
the more you are able to tell your customer about themselves,
Yes.
the better and more enduring your brand is going to be.
Yeah, I personally feel like customer insights is something that emerging entrepreneurs have left for the big brands. I
Yeah.
think emerging founders chase the sale, chase the product, they chase what other people are doing, but forget that everything is hidden in their customer. I
Well, and I mean, the thing is, it's such a massive sales opportunity.
Yeah.
Like we, for years have, worked with entrepreneurs around productizing their
Yes.
services.
Hmm.
And so a huge part of productizing the service, the difference, and I know this is obviously something that your customers really understand because they're all about products, but the big
Hmm.
thing, when you run a service-based business, it's like I can be whatever you want me to be. It's
Yes.
very customizable. When you're a product business, your product has to be so juicy and attractive that it pulls the market to you.
Yes.
And so there's the fundamental piece around customer research and customer
Hmm.
insight. But the thing that people miss is that it's one of the most powerful sales opportunities you have.
Hmm.
So, for instance, like if you are looking at creating stronger distribution channels,
Yeah.
you can position a very classic sort of sales call, will you carry my product? Or you can also position, hey, I want to really understand what matters to you when
Yes.
you're bringing in product lines. And so it really, that approach or the frame of customer research, it takes away some of the sales armor.
Yeah.
It dramatically increases the intel you're going to get, and
Hmm.
it allows you to create more trust-based relationships with
Hmm.
prospects or prospective buyers or distributors or retail partners, um, off like right off the shot. So I'm a huge fan of customer research. Think it's really underrated.
I loved how you reframed the conversation with the buyer.
Yeah.
I want us to now talk about the selling mindset and the mindset shift a founder needs to get into when they're pitching their product. Because a lot of people will say, I don't know how to sell. I feel like I'm shoving down my product on somebody's throat. How do we, what is the biggest mindset shift that women founders need to have when they're literally selling their baby? I usually say it's like you're selling your baby to somebody.
Yes. I think one of the most important mindset shifts is to create a stronger narrative around your relationship with your product and your business.
Mm,
So, when we think about ourselves selling our baby, the reality is we would never sell our babies.
that's true. Never.
So, so of course it feels like you're ripping something out of yourself,
Yeah.
something incredibly precious. It's born of you. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that, there's something about it that feels sublingual. So you get tongue tied when you're talking about it. How do you possibly encapsulate the value of your baby?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's extremely deep and personalized.
Yes.
And that can be incredibly challenging,
Very challenging.
from a sales perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that I've discovered, because I'm totally obsessed with women entrepreneurs, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
obsessed with how women think about business, how we
Mm-hmm.
bring a different mindset and values to business. I just love how we do business,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm obsessed with learning about it. But I have found that this level of personalization is actually it's not useful.
Mm.
And as I started working with entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, and I certainly experienced this myself, I started to see the degree to which we look at our businesses so closely as an extension of ourselves. It's like we suffocate them.
Oh, okay.
And when I think you think about there's me
Mm-hmm.
and there's my business.
Mm-hmm.
And I have needs,
Mm-hmm.
which are to be approved of, maybe to be,
Yeah,
that people like me, that people accept me. But my business has needs also.
that's true.
And my business, the primary need that a business has, like cash is to a business as oxygen is to a human.
Yes.
And so I think about that. So when we start to think about, hey, as I go into this conversation with a potential buyer or a distribution partner or whatever, I'm not actually here for myself. I'm here in a role of service to this business. And my role as the leader of this business is to help this business grow and develop and reach its potential on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't let my own stuff get
Mm-hmm.
in the way and curb its development,
Yes.
right? Like I have to be an advocate for my business, which means that it's really important for me to smoothen the pathway
Yeah.
that cash can flow
Yes.
between a buyer and my business. So I think there's an important mindset shift where as women leaders, we increase the professionalism of our business and we understand this isn't just this, it might have started as this, I don't know, it could have started as a grand experiment. It could have started as this little hobby thing. It could have
Mm-hmm.
started as this little dream,
Mm-hmm.
but let's show up like true leaders
Mm-hmm.
who have a responsibility to the business that we're leading to
Mm-hmm.
allow it to become robust, anti fragile,
Mm-hmm.
durable,
Mm-hmm.
and as we've discussed, an enduring brand.
How do you increase the professionalism of your business? How do you increase that conceptually? Because I feel like that's what's missing. Because
Yeah.
what you're talking about is the same relationship you have with your employer. It's like an
Yes.
employer-employee mindset. I come into work, I do my job, I leave.
Yeah.
How do you do that for something that you're so passionate about?
Hmm. I think that that's such a great question. I think to do that, you want to ask yourself, what does my business need? So, first of all, like this is actually quite a powerful exercise. I want you to sit and you sort of close your eyes and you think about yourself and you sort of put out your arms, right? So you have like this arm's length distance around you, and that's like your space, and that's you and your space, and it's what you need and what you, right? And then I want to think like right where your finger, if you stick out your arms and right at the place where your fingers end, I want you to imagine there's another field. And that field, it's like another, you're surrounded by this egg of golden light. And then there's another, touching it is another egg of golden light. And that is your business.
Hmm.
And so you are not your business. You collaborate with your business.
Mm.
And it's just like, when a business is new, you are going to be fueling a lot of that growth. You have to invest a lot of energy and resources and time and dedication to help that business access its markets, generate the cash flow. Like you are nurturing that business to help it stand on its own 2 feet.
Yes.
You know?
Sure.
So I think really looking at like understanding it's not, you are not your business. You are in relationship with your business. And in that relationship as a founder, you have a responsibility to it to grow and develop and nurture that business to be the best it can be, but ultimately to operate independently.
Just the same way we raised kids. We
Exactly.
raised them to be independent and
Exactly.
good stewards of the world.
That's right. Like,
Sure.
you know, if you have, and this is not a judgment thing, but I think the aspiration for most parents is not that you have a 45-year-old adult living with you, dependent on you. Like you're not nursing your 45-year-old,
Yeah.
you know, like it's not right. Like
No.
that's
No.
not considered successful.
No.
Your child is not you. It's
Yes.
independent. And so I think this is a part when we start to create that mental separation. And then you have the discipline of asking yourself, what does my business need? So I'll give you an example. I was talking to a woman earlier today who has a business, and she needs her business to be making more money. She personally needs her business to be making more money. Now, her business has grown in leaps and bounds. She's doubled her revenue in the last 6 months. She has really done a tremendous job. Like her business has really, really developed. It's been on a fast track. And now for personal reasons, she needs to make more money. And which is, that happens.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I love that you need to make more money. And I need you to understand you're putting an inordinate amount of pressure on your business right now. Would you, let's say you have a baby and it just learned to walk on its own. Would you be pressuring that baby to run? No. So this is like how we start to treat our businesses with the respect that they need. I think the reason that this is so key for premium positioning, everyone, is that premium positioning is thoughtful, it's durable, it's long-term. And so when you are like showing up with this short-term thinking, putting massive amounts of pressure on the business to produce results immediately, you know, just this kind of weird, like I need this. And so it has to produce, that's called an abusive relationship, you know, right? That's having an abusive relationship with your business. You're not really being the kind of leader, you know, that I know you're capable of being. And if I sound judgmental, I just want everybody to know, like, we've all been here.
Been there.
That this is how we all grow up as leaders ourselves.
Yes.
We realize, okay, we could do a little better. So, yeah.
Okay. I love that. So based on that, what do you think are the silent beliefs that sabotage sustainable sales growth for premium brands?
Yeah. I think there is, you know, and I get back to this idea of dichotomies. So, to build a premium brand, it's really important that you think long-term. You know, it's just really, really critical. That's the thing that makes it a premium brand. It's like long-lasting and durable.
Yeah.
That said, when it comes to sales, sales is like oxygen to the business, cash. And I think what people don't realize or forget is that when it comes to building a really strong sales function to be able to cash flow the growth and development of a brand, the clock always starts at 0 every day.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah. You know, and it's one of the most important mindsets for sales. So when I'm working with sales teams, it's like, look, you need to understand that every day we go back to 0. And you have to learn and cultivate the resilience, the strength, the internal muscle to be able to show up every day where the clock is back at 0. And it's all about how can we drive deals today? Right? Now, this is like, yeah. And it's hard. Like I remember somebody saying to me, they were talking about yoga and they were talking about how downward dog is the resting position.
Yes.
And I remember when I first started doing yoga, I was like, this, like my arms were shaking, sweat's pouring down. I'm like, how in the world is downward dog restful at all? Like, this is torture.
Yep.
And
If
then
you do it right.
you're right. Exactly. If you do it right. And then over time you do it, and then you get strong, and then
Yes.
it is the resting position.
Yeah.
But that's the same thing with sales. Sales requires a granular focus. It requires a sense of urgency. It requires a sense of dailiness. And it requires just showing up every day, knowing that the fact that you closed a deal yesterday, that's amazing. And the best time to make a new deal is right after you closed the previous one. So I think that dailiness, it requires a single focus. And this is why it can be so challenging for women, because our brains are wired to have diffuse focus. We're extremely holistic in how we think about things.
Yes.
Sales requires direct urgency, single point of focus. As in, are we going to drive this today? So I think that piece often when we're working with women entrepreneurs who are thinking very holistically about their business, that's when we have to be, and you know, holistic means all of the different functions, long-term, short-term. That's why we're like, look, you need to set aside pockets of time every day consistently where your only focus, the only thing that matters is that you're driving sales. It doesn't matter that you've got a breakdown on the assembly floor and you couldn't even fulfill these orders. That's great. Solve that in 2 hours from now. But right now, if you don't drive sales, you will feel it in your cash flow in about 90 days when it's too late to do anything.
I think the thing I've noticed with a lot of founders is they dream, but they don't dream big. And every dream they have is always tied back to sales. I want to make $2 million in a year.
Yeah.
How do they get to dream bigger than they are today? Because I see people being, okay, I just made 20,000 today. I'm fine. Why do I need to think about making 40,000 tomorrow? Like, what is the disconnect there? That's something I've never understood, because I think for me, I just know in business, you're supposed to make money every day because you have bills to pay every day.
Yes, yes.
Right? Because even at home, I have to pay my mortgage, I have to pay
Yes.
electricity. But how do female founders embody that? Especially when it's like the first time you're achieving success.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different ways to do this. For me, I have always found the most profound way for me to access bigger thinking is when I look at it from the perspective of a totally different category. So for instance, like if you have a fashion brand, it's really powerful to like look and learn from other fashion brands, to have information that's tailored to fashion brands. Like this is incredibly important for creating context and situational awareness. But if you really want to challenge yourself to drop all of the limitations and think differently, then I think we need to think about the fact that most innovation, you know, which is what we're talking about when we think about thinking big, like innovating and experimenting and what's possible. Most innovation comes from applying something that's worked effectively in a different industry to your own industry.
Yes.
So I can remember a couple of years ago, I was doing a talk about Duolingo, the language app. And the interesting thing about Duolingo, and I cannot remember, like my numbers are off on this because it's been a while since I had to pull them. But Duolingo basically operated for multiple years. It could have been like 5 or 6 years with no sales.
How?
But they had been able to secure multiple millions in funding.
Okay.
So let's say they got $20 million over 4 years.
Yeah.
And then finally, the founder of Duolingo was having a conversation with the branch of Google that has a venture capital fund that had funded them in their most recent fundraise. And the woman says to him, listen, this is it. There's no more money after this. Like you actually have to come up with a revenue model. You actually have to come up and actually figure out how the hell you're going to make money.
Yeah.
Which feels like to most business owners as, well, that feels very reasonable.
Yes.
But it took him 6 months to convince his senior leadership team that making money was important, because they were so passionate about making language teaching accessible. They're like, well, we'll just get more funding.
Oh.
So was such a completely different way of thinking. They wanted to have their language teaching tools available to everybody in the world, because a person's income globally is so much higher if they're able to speak English.
That's true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they really saw this as a powerful tool for social good. So I'm doing this talk and I say to the women, I want you to imagine that you had $20 million and 5 years and you had no stress about generating revenue at all. What would you work on? What would you try? What would you want for your business? Where would, like if you had no where and what starts to happen? Oh my gosh, you know what? I would be in every Saks Fifth Avenue. I would be having I would be in at the shows in Milan. Like I would have my own, like really, if you didn't have to worry about making money, paying your bills or anything, and you had 5 freaking years, what would you be working on?
Mm-hmm.
And that starts to open up. It opened up so much massively big thinking, for these entrepreneurs.
Wow. So think beyond your limitations, basically.
Yeah, totally. Like, and sometimes we need to our limitations, like our brains are so powerful and, habit oriented that sometimes we have to make up interesting scenarios, in order to trick ourselves into thinking differently or thinking in new ways.
I love that. And you talk about 3 key stages in the 200K to 2 million journey. What's the most misunderstood shift that needs to happen between growth and scale?
So a couple of things. There's 2 main shifts. So 2 main sort of, misunderstandings, I guess I would say. So the first one is that for most entrepreneurs, so let's say it's a brand, and I think what I'm about to say will be mostly relevant to the brands that are listening where the founder started as a maker.
Yes, majority of my people are from the kitchen table.
From the kitchen table. So they started as makers, so they would really relate to this. So what usually gets the business going is that the person is a maker. Yeah. And so really the initial business and the initial success of the business is fueled through their excellence as a producer. And that often will get to a certain revenue level, maybe like 200K or something like that. And then what happens is the founder needs to fundamentally switch their focus from simply being a producer to being a replicator. So, how do you go from being able to produce this extraordinary product at your kitchen table to being able to replicate that level of quality when you are now producing 100 pieces a week or 1,000 pieces a week, and the skills between being a producer to a replicator. One is like producers, it's often about craftsmanship, and as you go into replicator, it's much more about engineering, consistency, so it's a very different mindset. And what happens is at that stage, the business owner and the business itself typically doesn't have the capital it needs to outsource that. So the founder has to cultivate for a period of time a fundamentally different set of skills, where they're going from how do I produce this one time to how do I become a systems builder, or how do I build the machine that builds the machine. So I think that's one really key. The second thing that I'll share is that you're starting up your business, and people always think that they're going to go from startup to scale.
That's true. Doesn't happen.
Right? It's just from here to here. And if you think about a rocket ship, in order to take off, a rocket ship needs a stable base.
Yeah.
So the part that people generally forget about is a business must go through a transition of stability. Stability and predictability it's one of the most underrated aspects of scaling, which is that most quantum leaps in business have come on the back of a period of sustainable, predictable cash flow. So you want to take your business, and so we hear about all of the overnight successes, but the vast majority of really successful businesses have gone from startup to stability to scale. Yeah.
Over a period of time.
Yeah.
Yep. It doesn't happen overnight.
Doesn't happen overnight.
Happen overnight. Just like weight loss doesn't happen overnight.
I know. Well, it's kind of like, my trainer shared something the other day, and she was saying, I could give you the body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could give you your quote unquote perfect body,
Yeah,
but could you maintain it?
that's true.
And so often it's about, as leaders, it's about, we are very outcome focused. I know most entrepreneurs are, we want the outcome,
Mhm.
but the real question is, can we become the people capable of having that outcome?
You know
That's what we
what?
need to focus on.
You said something that man, I'm going to ask you this question because before you said it's about focusing on longevity and sustainability, and now you've talked about can you become that person? I personally feel like it's difficult to become that person right now in a world fueled by AI, instant gratification, like literally results overnight.
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you think that's challenging for founders? And if so, how do we reverse that? How do we
Mm,
become those people? Because entrepreneurship requires that.
yeah.
How do we
Speed.
succeed in a world where speed
Yeah.
is what people want?
Yeah.
Convenience is what people want.
Yeah. Well, it's so yes, and it's interesting because speed, the ability to move quickly,
Mm-hmm.
does not is not the opposite of longevity,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And so I do think, and there's definitely periods in the lifetime of a business where
Mm-hmm.
you're going to 100% have sprints. You
Mm-hmm.
do need to move quickly, and you do need to integrate technology. So I think all of those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
What I would um, what I would say is there are I remember hearing when I was a journalist, I was interviewing this really sort of controversial but interesting historian, and he's like, if you don't know history, you were born yesterday. And a couple of years ago, I read this fantastic book. It's just called Lessons in History. It's like 90 pages or 100 pages. It was written by this couple. They were in their 90s when they wrote it. They were historians. They'd basically, over the course of their lifetime together, there was this married couple. They'd written these massive histories of like pretty much every civilization you could think of.
Whoa.
A history of Mesopotamia, a history, like just tons. And then they're at their end of their life and they're like, you know what? We've actually kind of learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're going to we're just going to put some lessons of what we've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it was so powerful is because humans have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
There have been thousands of generations of people.
Mm-hmm.
And every generation believes that the things that it's grappling with are unique.
My mom says that all the time.
Yeah, your mom, right? She's
Yeah,
a
my
smart
mom.
woman. And so, and they are not, and they both are and aren't, so it's like, I think as a leader, there's a part of us that has to tap into the timelessness of the human experience,
Yeah.
And there's also a part of us, and we need to use that energy to be able to meet life's moments day by day. So I think this is like a philosophical conversation, which I think is very important for entrepreneurial leaders, because when cash flow and technology and the news cycles are pulling you, and you're supposed to create something out of nothing,
Mm-hmm.
create a value where value didn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
produce working cultures that support people,
Mm-hmm.
you have got to have a grounding yourself.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, the intuition. We all have that intuition and just tap into that muscle. Just it's the
Yes.
same thing I tell people like don't look at what other brands are doing. They're
Yeah.
probably just figuring it out. Like true brand building starts from inside.
Yes.
Inside your customers, inside your data. That's where all the answers are. Not what Mac is doing, not what Fenty is doing, not what Rare Beauty is doing. None of that. Doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
But that's an excellent way to answer that question. I love that. So you did a recent experiment in sales,
Mhm.
and your participants saw over 500% growth in 30 days.
Yep.
What did they stop doing that made them the biggest difference?
They stopped taking like a drone warfare approach and instead took a head-to-head combat approach. At this point, if you're still listening,
Yeah.
trust me, it's worth it. So I know people are like, why are we?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like, this is the thing about sales and growing revenue is about direct targeted outreach with
Mm-hmm.
prospects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're going and meeting them where they are. Now, even if you're online,
Mm.
it's how do I, so you might not be touching them, but you're trying to directly reach out, like speak to a buyer,
Mm-hmm.
belly to belly conversation. And so I think this was the main thing. There's a lot of, we're in a lot of our marketing now is very much optimized for inbound,
Yes.
and so this idea that, oh, I'll just create some funnels and then all of my buyers will come to me
Mm-hmm.
versus, yes, let's do that, but let's also make sure that there's really targeted outreach. What are you doing to reach out to potential customers who abandon their carts? What are you doing to reach out to influencers? Like, are you reaching out to brand collaborators, to influencers, like every single day? Do you have a daily target for specific focused outreach that you do to potential collaboration partners, brand affiliates, distributors, even buyers or customers? I think that fundamental shift, that sales is about direct targeted outreach and
Mm-hmm.
this must happen daily. That was the big thing that has helped us. And we have done in 12 months, we did a 30-day sales case study 3 times
Wow.
with, so each time we were working with between 25 and 30 entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
different groups of entrepreneurs, and every time their results were the same. And what we found that in so many brands,
Mm-hmm.
marketing is a very overdeveloped function and
Mm-hmm.
sales is a very underdeveloped function.
That's true.
Yeah,
But do you think the overdevelopment and underdevelopment is because of how people think about sales and marketing?
I think
Because I
so.
think a lot of people think marketing is sales, sales is marketing.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
I 100% agree. I think people really think that they try to get marketing to do sales' job.
Yes.
And when it doesn't, they say their marketing isn't working. I'm like, no,
Nailed it.
it's totally working.
Yeah.
It's getting awareness. It's
Yes.
it's warm, creating relationships. But
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing for marketing? So often marketing is seen as a support function for sales,
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true.
right? But sales has, and there's, you knock on sales door, there's nobody home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And meanwhile, marketing is like, well, thanks for nothing, guys. Like, we're
Yeah.
just over here shining bright.
Yeah.
We're getting no love from you.
That's true. That's true. And yeah, that's also another mindset shift for female founders. Those two are
Yes.
not the same.
They're not the same. And what we know from research coming out of organizations like the Women's Entrepreneurial Knowledge Hub is that women entrepreneurs tend to be much more innovative
Yeah.
in marketing. They are much more advanced in their marketing approaches and strategies than sort of mainstream companies. But their companies still generate less revenue. And often that does come down to sales. That's one thing that we've observed.
And I think for me, it puts a lot of pressure on a
Yeah.
marketing strategist, on a creative strategist, on a growth strategist, because if I can give you the biggest campaign, the campaign that will convert, but that will make people resonate with you. But you still have to reach out to the influencers, the brand partners, the buyers, so that they see what we're putting out and be like, this is a person I need on shelf.
Exactly. It's such a powerful conversation. And the thing is that you can see it. So for instance, like, when you have a strong, robust sales arm,
Mm-hmm.
and sales is massively about data,
Mm-hmm.
and marketing is also about data, but sometimes attribution is tough.
It's tough,
It's really tough,
especially with all these channels right now
right?
online. It's really
So
tough.
how do you know?
Yeah.
But because you give me 90 days of great marketing and 90 days of an effective sales outreach strategy, you will see it in the numbers.
Yes,
You know
that's
what I
true.
mean? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I fully agree with you on this. I think it's a powerful conversation that we need to
This,
have more of.
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
you're
Right.
speaking my language.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
just before we wrap up, so for women building brands in saturated categories of particularly the beauty, wellness, and fashion, what's your take on competing through resonance versus reach?
I think that you want to really understand what your positioning is. Like, you know, so for instance, if you have decided that you want to be more of a volume play, then do that. But I'll give you an example. I think the most important thing, the fundamental, is to be a student of your brand. I was listening to Emma Grede recently, right? Who we love. And she
Yes.
was talking about Good American.
Yeah.
And they saw a huge opportunity to have whatever they have, like 40 sizes or 19 sizes. They have 19 sizes in everything. They have 19 sizes in their tiniest bikinis. They have 19 sizes in their muumuus, for God's sakes. 19 sizes in everything they offer has 19 sizes, you know, and this is what she understood about her customers, and especially like with body positivity
Mm-hmm.
and a new sort of embrace of
Mm-hmm.
different body types and all this kind of stuff. Like women consumers are different.
Yes.
They're not, you know, and they want to decide what they want to wear. And so
Mm-hmm.
she understood so powerfully
Mm-hmm.
who her customers were.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, I mean, Good American operates in a massively saturated category, right? It's
Yeah.
like, right, moderately priced, you know, like it's just
Yeah.
so, but they've really been able to stand out, I think,
Mhm.
because they really understand their customers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're not endlessly curious and inspired by your customers,
Yeah.
if you're not kind of obsessed with how they do things and how they think about things and it's going to be very difficult that then you're not going to create relationships. And
Yeah.
people are so isolated. They're looking for relationships and they're looking for brands to mean something in their lives.
Yeah. That's true. That
Yeah.
is so true. It's the same thing like when I think about Fenty, because I feel like Fenty came in, broke in, just became the big brand. But do you know what I think she personally did?
What?
She launched recognition and belonging.
Yes.
She saw that there's a certain group of people who are in the rooms, they're there, but they're not on shelf. They cannot be seen.
Yes.
And she came out with this whole 40 shades. Headlines, we saw all the 40 shades, but I'm like, really? Her positioning was like, I'm seeing you.
100%.
And you need to be recognized, and I'm going to create it for you. And
Yes.
of course, she's a celebrity. She has the funding. She can do all this research, but it's that small gap.
Oh, totally. And she cares. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, she is repping Fenty at the Super Bowl.
Everywhere.
She shows up, like she will show up for the and I think she truly cares. And that's the thing. She's so consistent. Like Rihanna has so much to teach celebrities.
Yes, I think
about how to launch brands.
Yeah.
Like it's this consistency, but it's real care about her buyers. Like you can just tell.
Yeah. You could tell. And I've had this side conversation and I feel confident in saying this. I personally feel like Beyonce didn't need to launch what she launched with her hair. She could have done a wig and everybody would have bought her wig line.
Yes.
That's the difference between becoming obsessed with your audience and not being obsessed. If you know what they're telling you, you will launch for them.
Well, and it's so interesting because Beyonce, who I love, by the way, I have tons of love.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because her whole brand, like for many years now, it's about curation and controlling the narrative.
Yes.
You know, fine, I'll be on the cover of Vogue, but I'm organizing the photo shoot. I'm hiring and I'm writing my first person as told to article. And we love that, you know what I mean? But that is an artist expressing a cohesive point of view.
Yes.
Versus, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like you're buying merch.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Versus Rihanna, who it's like, hey, guess what? I'm going to do my own makeup tutorials. I'm going to show you how I use my new Luscious Lip Plumper. You know, like I'm going to show you how, like it feels like a collaboration. It feels like a true relationship with her audience that she truly cares about us. And that's the difference between Ms. $1 billion, you know, beauty brand.
Yeah.
And more on Beyonce's, you know, when you buy something from her lines, it feels like you're buying her merchandise, which again is totally cool. It's like a difference in
positioning and how you want to connect with your audience. But I feel like the greatest brands that win are the ones that really focus on that one person, because that's the fan. That's the person who's buying. That's the person who's selling for you when you're asleep.
Totally. Totally. Yes.
Awesome. This is such a fantastic conversation. And one of the questions I ask everybody who comes to the show is, if your brand left one message behind, a message that outlives you, what would it be?
When women earn, we all win.
Mic drop. And why is that important to you?
Well, we know, for instance, research from the United Nations shows us that women circulate 90% of their wealth back into their communities and families, and men circulate 35%. Now, this is not a we're better than them kind of scenario, by the way. It has a lot to do with actually what our earning power actually is.
Yeah.
But we see that as we sort of start to uplift women-owned brands and women-owned businesses, we really see that circulation of revenue and money have a direct impact on communities. It's how we do business. And so I think I'm all about empowering the private sector, building a strong capitalist society where small businesses thrive, and really creating opportunity that way. I really firmly believe in that. And I think women are starting small businesses that are growing into bigger businesses faster than ever before. And we know when we financially empower those companies, they employ diverse supply chains, they're circulating that money back into the community. That's what it means when women earn, we all win.
I love that. And you're doing such incredible work. Where can people interact with you? Where can people find you, learn more about you, purchase anything that you have? I'd love for them to come into your vortex.
Well, if you enjoy podcasts, I'd suggest that you listen to the Woman-Owned podcast. It's called Woman-Owned, the growth podcast for women entrepreneurs. And you can connect with me on any of the socials at Eleanor Beaton. I'm mostly present on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. This was such a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Maureen.
That's a wrap on Build an Obsession Brand. If you're relying on passion alone to grow your brand, you're flying blind, because real success takes strategy. If today's episode hit home, share it with another brand builder who needs to hear this. My mission: helping emerging brands get the right recipe for success. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on Instagram at Maureen Mwangi Official. Until next time, build with precision, because big brands aren't built by accident.